call the January 20th Select Board meeting to order and go through the remote accessed script. We're using Zoom webinar for our meetings, which allows for the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to each meeting. The registration link can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed for the meeting. People registering to be an attendee must use their names, otherwise they will not be allowed to participate. Attendees will join in the listening mode and they can click their hands to raise a button if they wish to speak. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order in which they were raised at the appropriate time in the meeting. As a preliminary matter, I'm Dawn Holgate, Chair of the Nantucket Select Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. I'll start with Select Board members in the order in which I see you. Melissa Murphy.
Here.
Christy Ferrantella.
Here.
Jason Bridges.
Here.
Matt Fee is just coming on. It looks, Matt, can you hear me?
Yes, got it.
Thank you. I will go through town staff members. Amy Baxter.
Here.
Erica Mooney.
Present.
Brian Turbot.
In attendance.
Jericho Miele.
Here.
Roberto Santamaria.
Here.
Libby Gibson.
In attendance.
Rob McNeil.
Here.
Tom Rafter.
Here.
Mark Willett. Mark Willett, are you with us?
I'm here.
Thanks, Mark. Mark Voigt.
Here.
Thank you. Also present, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Is it Zena Metri?
Yes, here.
Thank you. And then we have Paula Driscoll. Hi, Paula. Robert Eisenstein. And Denise Allen. Okay. This open meeting of the Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment as previously noted through Zoom webinar. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to share the screen of your computer unless you intend to. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda after they conclude their remarks. People can raise their hands for questions or comments. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps us generate accurate minutes. If you wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And finally, each of our votes tonight will be taken by a roll call. And I don't believe that there are any changes to the agenda. Before we turn to announcements, I just feel like I would be remiss to not congratulate our new president, Joe Biden, for his inauguration today. And hopefully we can welcome the Biden family back to Nantucket on Thanksgiving soon. And the other historic win is that we have the first female as the vice president that we've ever had in our country's history. And it's just a very historic day today. With that, let's turn to announcements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to mention there is a tiny change to the agenda, which I might not have made clear earlier.
Sorry.
Under the fiscal 22 But enterprise fund budget presentations, we will not be doing sewer tonight. We will do sewer next week.
Thank you. That was my mistake. You did mention that.
That's okay. So that was it on that. As far as announcements go, I think you may have already noted this meeting is being video and audio recorded. We have a virtual open house coming up. The Nantucket Coastal Resiliency Plan is having a community, we are having a community open house on the Coastal Resiliency Plan. It will be held Thursday, January 28th at 5:30 p.m. And there is a link on the agenda and online as well that people can go to register for that. Again, that is Thursday, January 28th at 5:30. And our last announcement is that contrary to statements to statements made by possibly more than me at last week's meeting, the 2021 Boston Pops event is not canceled at this time. That is a hospital decision that has not been made yet.
Thank you, Libby. Next, we'll turn to our COVID-19 weekly update. If there are no public or board comments, I will turn it right over to Roberto Santamaria, our Public Health Director.
Hello. So it's been a nice and quiet week, and then I'll go ahead and share my screen. I don't see Gary on here yet, but we'll go from there. And then, sorry, pause that. COVID-19 update. So where we go from here, I'll cover, if Gary can't join, I'll cover what he's saying. So from there, to date, we've done 23,000 tests with a total positive of 1,056. I'll be reporting it monthly because that's how the hospital is collecting their data, but stop the spread tests as of last time we reported it was 5,400 with 84 positives for 1% testing rate. And then from there, I've added a few little things just so that we can get more information out there as we can. So what we saw in the last 7 days was 60 cases, which is almost half of what we saw last week in the previous 7-day period there. And then 113 in the 7-day period before January 6th, so, which is really great. A little unnerving that it so precipitously dropped, but it is pretty good. I wanted to put out some of the crude death rate information out there because we were getting a lot of questions about it. Because what we're seeing in other cities and towns and things like that in the state of Massachusetts, and people were asking where we were comparing, where we were compared. And then also mainly because we had, unfortunately, the one case at OIH and the 2 cases at Sherburne that were announced last week. So people immediately latched onto what happened in other areas in Massachusetts. So they asked a lot of questions. They asked the questions here, so we wanted to give the information. Our crude death rate is very, very low, which is really good. Barnstable's is one of the highest in the state in comparison, but that's because it did burn through a significant elder facility. The same thing that was happening. We were able to, through the great fast work of the OIH staff and Kevin over at Sherburne Commons, they were able to isolate those who were infected, and they were able to test everyone else at the facilities, at both facilities. So the good news is that those did come back negative, and we are just waiting out the isolation period. To our knowledge, all 3 cases from those 2 facilities are in good spirits with mild symptoms and are expected to recover fully. So with our metrics, our continued metrics, we have a 7-day average of 7.4%. Same thing with the individuals who have died. We're keeping that below 4, which we're at 0.38. And the good news is that we are now back up to good qualitative status in our testing capacity, and same with our contact tracing capabilities. The CTC has said that they have been able to get in contact with everyone. We're seeing this trend across the state, so I'll get to it shortly. We did not receive this week's sewer testing because it's a short week. So we are expecting that either tomorrow or Friday. So where we are, cumulative incidents, we have crossed the 1,000 person threshold, which, you know, we're doing very well considering the first case in Massachusetts was in February and we went into our local lockdowns in March. So we're almost a full year into this and we only just now crossed the 4-figure threshold. It's a testament to the people of this island and our visitors that we were able to keep that relatively low. And it's the same thing in the last 30 days. You'll see that the curve is actually slowing down. We did see a quick increase in cases early in January, but then we are back onto a nice slow increase. So once again, this is last week's information. I just want to call out that this week's report has not come back due to the short week. So when we do get that information, when we do get the report in, we will post it as soon as possible. So this is where we are in our previous month of cases. We can see this the post-Christmas spike and that post-New Year's spike here in the middle, but then we had a pretty precipitous drop off where we are now to about half of where we were. We're hoping that the sewer numbers, when they come back tomorrow or Friday, that it'll also show that we have the same thing coming in for the rest of the week, next week. Due to the quick drop, our number has dropped to below 1. Quick calculations, we did see a little bit higher based on our trend of the 7-day running average. So that would have been probably closer to 0.6 or 0.7, but we did have a slight increase in our 7-day positive average in the last few days. But in the state of Massachusetts, we're also seeing the same trend, that in the past few days, our number dropped below 1. So we are on our way to interrupting the chain of transmission and slowly letting this burn out across the state and the country. So back to our vaccine plan, I'll be pointing this every week. We are at the home-based healthcare workers. You'll see on the next page where I discuss the congregate care settings. If you signed up for the phase 1, you should be getting phone calls from the hospital now to schedule your vaccine. So the congregate care, it seems as if you were paying attention from last week to this week, you'll see that we may have skipped the congregate care, but it's because they're on a different schedule. We didn't skip them, they're just scheduled individually. So OIH was scheduled on the 1st of January, on January 5th, first week, and then Sherburne Commons, their vaccinations start next week. So they are running in parallel. All the phase 1 steps are running in parallel right now. We are right on schedule from what we're looking at. In fact, ahead of schedule and compared to many other cities and towns in Massachusetts, which is pretty great. We're expected to close phase 1 within the next few weeks. Sign up survey that was supposed to say phase 2 is available. We did close phase 1 yesterday because we are now moving on to the preparations for phase 2. If you did miss the sign up for phase 1, but you believe you are in phase 1, please email us at health@nantucket-ma.gov with your information, and we will get back in contact with you to schedule it. We are still waiting for phase 2 to begin, for those vaccines to be released. We are working and partnering with the hospital for the mass vaccination clinics. We are in negotiations with the VFW right now to maintain the clinics over there. If you are signed up for the phase 2, we will be sending out a mass email letting you know of this, but also just like with the old CastNet program, please sign up for the patient gateway. We will be providing links on the town website and it'll be in the mass emails. If you are already a patient at any of the MGB hospitals or at a Nantucket Cottage Hospital, you should already have an MRN, and signing up for the patient gateway can be done through the app or the website. If you need more information, you can give us the call at this hotline. We do monitor that voicemail if we have to, if you do leave a voicemail, but please call here to get for more information, and then you can also call us directly at our office. And then same with the QR code, which is scannable with any of these tablets, just for Anyone who's watching at home or watching this later, please pause it now so that you can go to the town website. It'll take you straight to the COVID website. So then from there, I think we're done. I don't see Gary signed in.
Gary is saying he has not received the invite. We've sent it out twice, and so I don't know, there's a problem, I guess. So
Okay.
Roberto, you probably ought to proceed with his part.
Yes, so that's good. So I'll just move on to where we are. These are the cases from the last week and a half, 2 weeks. What we're seeing is a couple more in the elderly population, but this is the general breakdown. Once again, we're seeing the case in the spread in the younger population, people 40 or younger, or even 50 or younger, is where we're seeing it's the general working groups, those of us who are still out there interacting, because the schools have done a great job. You'll see only a few cases here, which is why we were okay with going back to school. Transmission was doing pretty well. And then close that out. And then with the last 7 days positivity rate, you'll see the fluctuation here that mess with our R number. We jumped by 1% as the old numbers drop off. But it's still, half of where we were just last week. So we are doing very well. And we hope to keep this trend going through the vaccination phases. And with that, I will close the share and be open to any questions.
Jason?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Roberto, can you remind me where Landmark House, Homestead, Academy Hill, where do they fall into the phases?
Yes, so those groups in the phases all fall into this first step of the next phase, phase 2. Jericho, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. They are in that first step of phase 2. Homestead, we did connect with Homestead. We did connect with all of them individually. They already signed up as many of their residents as I know Homestead has signed up all of their residents. Jericho, do you know if any of the others signed up?
I believe they should all be signed up at this point.
So we do have all that information, and we are partnering with the hospital to get all that scheduled, and then we should be able to get all the vaccines to everybody. We're just hoping. Thank you, Jason. I meant to cover those, that we had that question this week, so thank you for asking.
Thank you. I was asked that as well. Melissa?
Thank you very much, Dawn. Through you to Roberto, if somebody is taken the sign-up sheet for phase 2 and not received an email confirmation, what should their next step be?
So we had, I'll field this one since I've been getting the calls on this one. We had a error with the logic in the survey form. It prevented confirmation emails for about the first, I think somewhere around the first 100, 150. Anyone who signs up now should be getting a confirmation email. Anyone who has not received a confirmation email and is very worried about it should sign up again on the phase 2 site. Same if you have additional, if you entered the information wrong or anything like that. It's much easier for us to remove duplicates from the database than it is for us to individually change people's data. So if you are at all concerned or you didn't receive a confirmation email, sign up again, and then we can sort the duplicates out on our end. Ditto if there are any, there was a couple of problems with the way people were putting comorbidities in, put them both in that one section that says comorbidities separated by a slash, and then we'll be able to handle that. So basically, if you're at all concerned about whether or not your information got in, re-sign up again on the town page. We can sort out the doubles through the database afterwards.
Fabulous. And a follow-up, if I might, is the hotline, the 508-325-4151, just a vaccination hotline, or is that a more generic COVID-19 hotline?
That is primarily geared specifically towards information about the vaccine.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you.
Christy?
Thank you. Through you to Roberto, we're making a lot of progress with phase 1 vaccine. Will there be any chance for us to move into phase 2 ahead of the state plan?
So yes, that's a complicated question. It's a yes and a no. If we have vaccines doses that are already open or already in our refrigerators that are available, in order to not waste any vaccine, yes, we're just going to keep going. But those shipments are tagged specifically as phased shipments. So once we run out of phase 1 doses, we can't just move into phase 2 until we have formally moved into phase 2. We can get that designation from the state, but it's possible, but there's a process.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, should we move on to the task force weekly update? Is that Jericho?
Yeah. So today, first thing is the enforcement numbers. This is all cumulative as of, I believe, around 11 o'clock this morning. I think we have one more day's worth to put in, but we have a cumulative number of 245 inspections. We've visited either first or second time 183 job sites. We've had 11 requests for clarification about guidelines, 14 tips leading to an enforcement action of one sort or another, a total of 54 enforcement actions. And to add a little bit of granularity to that, the breakdown of what an enforcement action is, approximately 50% have been single time warnings. About 40% of those interactions have either been a educational or guideline review or something equivalent to that. And we're thankfully well under 10% in terms of citations. I believe we have about 6 job stoppages that have come from COVID rules, COVID compliance violations. The next step in the COVID plan, as far as enforcement goes, we're starting to gear up for the spring landscaper construction season speeding up, and we're going to, just as part of due diligence, we're going to start looking back on occupancy limits for restaurants, just to make sure everyone's doing that. I've got no cause for concern on that. It's just literally due diligence at this point. And that's about it for the enforcement beat. It's been relatively low qualitatively. There's been a minor spike in non-compliance, but it's been due to, I think, confusion about guidelines. So we're sort of stepping up the outreach and education element of that. Also, other news, we've got the smell and sniff stickers here. So we're going to give these a try. We're going to be reaching out with the research partners on that to figure out exactly what their proposal is and how they're planning on working that. And we should be hearing more about that in the next week or so, I believe.
Did you try one yet?
I haven't, because I feel like once I start, I'm just going to go through the whole pack, more or less. But you can see that this looks to be an end user base. Like, this is basically what you're going to be getting during the test and possibly when it goes into production. There's 5 different smell sites on it. They'll have you do little Scantron bubbles to match the smell with what it actually is. And then there's an app component that we need to discuss with the guys who are running the study or program.
Thank you. And any questions for Jericho? I see that Gary Shaw has come on. Gary, did you want to add anything? I'm not sure if you know what Roberto said.
I apologize for yeah. I think everything's probably been covered that I would have. I was watching on the online version, but so I just had trouble opening the link for some reason. I'm available for questions. I would just say that I think things are going relatively well. The porticos are low in volume, as I think you all know. That's a good sign. That we always look at that as an indicator of things to come. I was asked a little bit earlier in the week, are we at the point where we need to close some of the portico locations? And my answer was, that's not going to be my decision. That's going to be decided by the virus. And so I think we just continue to look at this moving forward. And I think the good work that we put in place is going to stay there until we, see whether or not we need it long term. But I do want to make sure that that also stays in place in case we need it for either a vaccination protocol or something else. So don't expect the face of the cottage hospital to change. And I did ask my staff recently to double down on moving between departments and being careful out in the community. And it's obviously because the variant we know is going across the country. It's more effective. And it's just, I hate to say this, but it is time to triple down and be more careful until we can get that vaccine out there and know that we have a good spread of coverage. So it's just really important to be diligent. That's all I would emphasize to the community. I think folks are obviously wanting to be healthy, but do the best you can to try to protect somebody else and yourself. And please consider the vaccine when it comes out. And if you need some help with a decision, just please reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you about the medical pros and cons with your particular situation.
Christy?
Thank you. So I know you just said there's not really a need to close anything, but how much longer is the Stop the Spread going to be available on island, and do we need to request an extension at the state?
Well, my understanding is it goes through March, and the VFW lease coincides with that time frame. I don't know where the state's going to sit, Christy, within a few months as it starts to get its vaccines rolled out, and whether it feels it needs to keep all of that in place. I would suggest they do. I think that we're at a precipice where we want to find it. We want to vaccinate it. And it's a great commitment to have it going that long. And then we'll start getting into some of the folks coming back at that point in time. And I think that it would also be important to know what we're seeing coming back and have that capability. So we will work with Roberto and you as a leadership group. And if we feel as a team we want to extend that, we can certainly put that request out at any time.
Jason?
Thank you. This is for Roberto and Gary. Because you guys are in it and in these circles, I try to listen to media, but I never really know what, where the truth is. What are you hearing on the vaccine? Do you feel, this could be too early, do you feel like it's, we're on the right track to get to places by May and June and July with production? And I'd always like to, because I have you here, I'd like to hear what you guys think.
Roberto, I'll jump in and then and only jump in now because I just had a conversation with Dr. Slavin at the Mass General. There is not a backlog or a hold of vaccine. I just want the community and you to know that it's come in, it goes out, and then obviously there's a commitment for a second round, and so that's how it's been handled to date. We have every confidence that the production capability that needs to address the second round and also start to produce a larger wave of vaccine is apparent. And although we've not heard what those numbers would be coming to Massachusetts, I know that the governor will put out information related to how he intends to distribute what he gets. There's probably considerable pressure, understanding our new president wants to move faster. Although we've not heard that that there would be a speed up, of a phased plan, we have positioned ourselves from a vaccine planning perspective so that if that happens, we can address it. And of course, I've said to you in the last select board meeting, we're ready to lean in and start delivering doses in any way necessary if we were able to get them, and we're hopeful that they're on the way and coming soon.
Any other questions for Gary? Okay, thank you. Maybe stick around for a few minutes in case something comes up while we're still under the COVID section. But I'm going to go to Melissa Murphy for the Economic Task Force update.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dawn. So on behalf of my co-chairs, Christy Farentella, Janet Schulte, and I, we met today as the fully formed group. And it's a small but mighty group. We adopted a mission statement, which was simply the task force will support local businesses and nonprofits as they prepare for and execute a safe and successful 2021. We expanded it beyond the summer season, understanding that the fall and early winter next year may also look a little different. We just want to be prepared for it all. There are 3 subgroups of the task force, similar to the task force outline that was endorsed by the select board on January 6th. We have an open places and open streets work group. We have a resources research work group, which will also include technology resources as well as grant and other business support resources. And then we have an outreach work group, which will work on communication, streamlined communication between the town and the Chamber of Commerce and other media organizations. We hope to have a more formal update every week that we will share here and also share with media outlets like the Inquirer Mirror and Daybreak and the Above the Fold, the radio stations, so that the messaging is succinct and clear for everyone about how to access these resources and also how to communicate with this task force. We understand that because we're a small group, we may not be representative of each and every industry type, but we hope that we've got a broad enough representation and great networking with the people who are on the task force that we can get feedback, ideas, and hear concerns as well as solutions from our business community. So, and all of that, of course, is with the overall emphasis that we want our community to stay healthy. Thank you, Gary, for that reminder that we need to triple down. And we want the best possible economic outcome for our businesses this season. So that's it, unless Christy or Janet feel that I left something out. I don't see that Janet's here, but.
Any questions? Christy, you're good? Okay.
Thank
I don't
you.
think there's any update on Board of Health orders, or are there any other questions, comments, board members, public? Gary Shaw?
Yeah, thank you. I just, I've had quite a few questions come recently to me about, and to Dr. Pearl about the vaccine and the new variant. And all the science that we understand is pointing towards the vaccine covers it. So don't worry that this particular vaccine is going to do anything other than help protect you. And certainly when it becomes available, again, please try to obtain that as soon as you can. But it appears to cover this variant, and I know that there's a process where when samples come in, that they are checking to see if there are new genetic strains and mapping all of them to see how this thing changes. Can you imagine how complex that process is, and that we can do that very quickly and see what has been out there, and then if something shows up new, and then compare it to the vaccines that we have. That's the work that's being done across the country. So it's good to know that it's effective and it's still working for us.
Thank you, Gary.
My pleasure.
If there's nothing else on COVID, let's turn over to our regular public comment for this evening. This is an opportunity for anyone to raise an issue, bring anything to our attention, that is not otherwise on the agenda for discussion. Will not necessarily be commented back on, but we will take in any input from the community. I don't see any hands. So let's move, no new business. Let's move to approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. Can we do the minutes and treasury warrants together?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Thank you. That passed. John Holgate, that passes unanimously. Approval of pending contracts. Are there any questions or comments on the contracts? Matt?
Just one comment on the awning. It's back up again. At some point, the town, it should be part of the lease. It was when my parents ran it 30 years ago. That was our responsibility. And we've spent a lot of money on it in the last few years. I mentioned this last time it came up, and it's back up again. If we are going to pay for it, my suggestion would be to spend the money to make it a wood roof and put a wood roof there that doesn't have to cost this money every time. But that's, so I will, I'll abstain on that or oppose that, and I agree with everything else.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I don't really want to open up a mess, but I did ask the DPW director and the facilities director to answer any questions about the awning as far as repairs and things of that nature go. So if there are specific questions about those, they are standing by to answer any questions. And if not, then proceed.
Matt, did you want to comment on that?
I don't have any questions really. It's just when we, in the old days, in the good old days, the awning came down every winter. It came down every storm and went back up. So, and it was the responsibility of the tenant to do that or they'd lose their awning. And so that, that's just my, it has changed. It's shifted. The responsibility shifted to the town. We've put something different up that's permanent. That's a difficult location to have a permanent awning. So that's my only comment. I don't have any questions about it. I know enough about it. So.
Okay, is there a motion?
Don, I'm sorry. Rob had his hand raised. I
Oh,
know.
I'm sorry, Rob. I missed you.
Rob.
No problem. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add a comment to what's been said. I greatly appreciate feedback into facilities, and I know that the town manager is going to be facilitating a future select board workshop specific to the future of concession buildings. And I think we'll find out a lot more about where you all stand with various issues then. But to all the points that have been raised by Matt to this point are helpful and important in couching, how we move forward with a lot of this stuff. So you are right, Matt. This is a permanent install. There's some serious challenges to that. The structure of the agreements and all that are certainly worth scrutinizing moving forward. I know the town manager's office is working through that now. And I think reimagining the buildings and the sites that they're on is an important discussion to have specific to coastal resiliency and sea level rise discussions also. So I look forward to that. And I appreciate the support on this.
Thank you for those comments, Rob. That's really helpful. Is there a second on the motion?
I'll second.
All those in favor by roll call: Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye on all except the awning.
Okay, Don Holgate, aye. Next, we have public hearings. I will open the public hearing to consider an application to transfer all alcoholic beverages package store license from the Islander Inc. DBA, the Islander, Paula Driscoll, manager, to Portside Islander Inc. DBA, the Islander, Zana Metri, manager, for premises located at 15 Old South Road. Paula, it's the end of an era.
Thank God. 38 years I've paid my dues.
Well, I will just briefly go over kind of the outline here. And yes, we're gonna definitely miss Paula's. Very fun to work with. Enjoyed that. So just briefly, this is, as you mentioned, a license transfer. Some similarities to a new license, obviously new ownership, a couple of distinctions I just want to make for the record. The license under transfer application is still valid with the original LLC, and Paula as manager and understands through this process is responsible for the operation of the license and anything that happens during that time through approval by the select board and the ABCC. They do not need to close during this process as you would in a new application, so that is standard there. The history of the license travels with the transfer to the new LLC. It'll be the same number and have that history there, which is a good one. To address the quota that comes with package stores, Section 15, package stores are subject to a quota that resets every 10 years in response to the federal census. We are obviously awaiting those numbers for this year and whether that changes. At the moment, this class and category of license, we are over by 2 licenses, meaning we would have to surrender 3 in order to issue a new license in this category. So therefore, a transfer is really the only option in this category, and that's why they are able to do so, if there's a question for that. One other thing too, as far as package stores in Massachusetts, there are ownership requirements. Applicants must be both a citizen and resident of Massachusetts. And currently, I believe the maximum number of Section 15 licenses allowed for one entity is 9. The applicant here, Zena, who can certainly address you once I'm through here, is a resident of Massachusetts and currently owns, hopefully I'm correct here, 5 additional stores, and she can address that as well. So she's within those requirements as well. From a licensing perspective, there's no objections to the transfer. They provided all the required information, have over 20 years experience in owning and operating package stores. And I have to say, when we got the application, it was a delight because it was very well organized. So it was clear they've certainly been doing this for a long time. So if you want to help others with that, that'd be great. So that has been clear for us.
I'm
So
open,
hopefully-
yes.
Yeah,
I've done them quite a few times. I have.
We noticed that. So that's all from us. All the requirements have been met. So any questions for me or the applicant as well?
Sure. Do you want me to speak or?
If you would like to, yes, it's your opportunity.
To just introduce myself. So I think you did a good, you already did. My name is Zaina Metri. So my husband and I, actually, we both work together. We started 22 years ago in Pocasset, and we have few stores on the Cape and on the South Shore. And we're so excited to come to the island. So, and a lot of experience, and my husband is sitting right here. He can just, if he's allowed to just say hello whenever you want, if you need be.
He's welcome to.
All right, George, you want to just come so they can know, because we will be working hand in hand like we have been, and he's, he's part.
Hi, George.
Hello. Hi, Paula.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
We're excited, and I love Paula, and I know she's going to be a great help for us to get to know the island. She's been there for, I think she said 38 years, right, Paula? She's ready to move on and do other things, but I know she's going to be in the background whenever.
Staying on island.
Definitely, which is great. So we're excited and just ready to kind of get with it.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing, so anyone from the public is welcome to speak on this application before I close it, but I've not seen any hands raised. Do the board members have any questions before I close the public hearing? Okay, I will close the public hearing and we can go to a vote. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. Thank you. Congratulations to
Thank you
all.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
You.
Bye.
Next,
It's my first Zoom meeting.
thank you. Just
It
make
went
sure,
well.
make sure you mute and you can log off when you want to too.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to open the public hearing to consider an annual all alcoholic beverages restaurant license for Lola 41 LLC, DBA Lola 41, to Lola Hospitality Holdings LLC, DBA Lola 41, Joseph Allen Burgess, manager for premises located at 15 South Beach Street. Actually, the matter has been withdrawn to be re-advertised for February 3rd, excuse me. And same.
You don't need to do both.
So do I need to, it's been withdrawn, so it's re-advertised. So we don't even need to open it. So excuse me, I'm doing this wrong.
We have, because of the LLC information change, have re-advertised and sent a new abutter notification for this
Okay, thank
for
you.
February 3rd.
Okay, so those will come back on February 3rd. Town managers report. I'll turn it over to Libby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first item is review of fiscal 21 second quarter budget reports. And we did some of these last week, and this week we have the general fund, our island home, enterprise fund, and the airport enterprise fund. And if we could slightly move the order here to do general fund, airport, island home. And then when we get to fiscal 22, we will be doing island home first so that Bob can be right in a row. So first off, we've got the general fund being reviewed by the finance director.
Thank you very much. Good evening. So we're here to talk about the first 6 months of fiscal 21. And I would like to just start out by saying fiscal 21 actually is performing substantially or significantly better than I think anyone anticipated when we were redoing the budget back in May for the June town meeting. As you can see, we've collected approximately $55 million in revenue in the first 6 months of the year. Property tax collections remain strong and the remaining balance from the fourth quarter of fiscal 20 certainly remains strong in collections, as well as the collections for the first 2 quarters of the fiscal year ending in 2021. One note really on the revenue side is, as you'll see in the 6-month snapshot, we have collected over $7.1 million in short-term and rooms occupancy tax. The majority of that 7.1 is driven by short-term rentals. The short-term rental tax for the first two quarters through December 31st generated a little over $5.6 million of the $7.1 million total. Certainly as we built the 22 budget, I know that that's a very large increase, especially over what we had been projecting might happen, given the uncertainties. The town manager and I in the presentation to not only with the school committee and to this board did note that we were being somewhat conservative because we were not sure what will happen into 22 or 23. So while 7.1 is a really great number for this year and certainly will help offset any potential reductions in any of the other local estimated receipts, primarily building, electrical and plumbing and wiring permits, it's something that we're continuously monitoring through the remainder of this year into next year because there's still so much uncertainty as we move through the phases of this pandemic that's still gripping us. General fund expenses were fairly consistent and relatively remained flat with respect to fiscal 20. One thing to note, we are looking at it, is there was a substantial increase of about almost $200,000 in the Marine Department. Most of that can be attributed to the additional lifeguards and the increased usage of the beaches, which we're looking to see potentially if we can move some of that overage into potentially the beach revolver or how we can manage through that for the remainder of this year. But overall, the general fund is performing from a revenue standpoint exceptionally well. There's still some uncertainty as we move through this 6 months of what it will look like, but we're certainly cautiously optimistic at this point of the year. And expenses are performing pretty much in line with what we had budgeted and where we had expected. We're continuously reviewing them to make sure that we're capturing any COVID payments and putting those into the fund that we had transferred the $600,000 from free cash last year. But overall, we're cautiously optimistic that we'll end the year on a positive note. Can you, next page, Erica? Next page. Next page. So this is a 6-month comparison that I was kind of referring to. The local rooms tax, as you can see here, is $7.1 million. The fiscal 20 actuals, actually due to timing the receipt for the second payment in the second quarter for fiscal 20 was actually posted in January. So that's why that's slightly down, but overall it's not materially that much different. Again, $55 million against $47 million. So we certainly have seen an uptick, which is, we're cautiously optimistic, as I would like to continue to stress, because we do have 6 months left in this fiscal year to go. Next page. Perfect. Can you go 2 more down to the next one? No, you're right there. Perfect. Thank you. So here, 51 million versus 52 million in line. The only thing that we are still working on, we are parsing out the retirement assessment, which will change this number somewhat. It was done very late in the end of December last year. That will be coming into the third quarter, which will be parsed out to the enterprise funds as well. But overall, again, still performing in line with the revised budget projections that we had proposed for the town meeting in June. Next slide. We continue to maintain AAA with Moody's and actually is AA plus with Standard & Poor's. We hopefully will be having a ratings a review with Standard & Poor's, which is simply a telephone call to kind of update where they are. And we're cautiously optimistic that they will potentially upgrade us as well, given the fact that we are the only community in the Commonwealth that has a AAA bond rating from Moody's and a AA plus from Standard & Poor's. Next slide. Investment report overall still still performing well in all the investments. We have all of the money is managed with Morgan Stanley through various accounts. That includes OPEB, the stabilization accounts, scholarship funds. They're currently managing through a very cyclical point and very volatile time, but overall managing through it very well, and we're pleased with the results at this point still. Next slide, please. Yep. And that's it. Any questions from anybody?
Can't see everyone.
It's
shout
Matt.
out.
I've
Okay,
got a
go
quick
ahead.
one. Brian, do you do a balance sheet? Does the town maintain a balance sheet?
We do. I don't have it off the top of my head, but we can get you on. Yes.
Yeah, just send one, because I was going to ask, geez, how much do we have in there? And I thought, oh, it'd be on the balance sheet, and I could do
It will be now. We're happy to send it, but just also one caveat as we send it is that this is as of today, and those numbers will fluctuate as we move through the remainder of the 6 years. But obviously, as a point of reference, it's certainly going to show that our undesignated fund balance is most likely going to be increasing at this point. But again, still optimistic about where we'll end the year.
No, and I agree with that. It's great. Yep. And I understand how a balance sheet works. I get it.
Yep.
Thanks.
Jason?
Thank you. For Brian, I think when we made those very conservative projections for permits and rooms tax, the local receipts, I think we were going to be 60% down.
Yeah.
Was that right?
It is. And that was based on the fact that as we were doing that and as we were at town meeting, there was still a lot of uncertainty on what travel or what would be able to be done at that time was where we were kind of resting on a substantial decrease.
Do you think we'll be more kind of level, 20% down?
I think that, right. No, I don't. I think that this year we're obviously going to see an uptick over previous years. I think that in my discussions with the town manager, and I think during even my first quarter presentation to the board, part of me thinks this might be somewhat of a little bit of an anomaly, just because in the beginning of the pandemic, very thankfully, we were deemed to be extremely safe, and with the ability to work from home, people were coming here. Not that we're not safe now. I just think that, as people are able to eventually get back to some type of normalcy, I don't know if all of those people will continue to go here or whether their travel habits will shift somewhat. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I think we'll settle back into a range of previous years. I don't know that we'll see this really sizable jump again in the future, but that's just anecdotally what I think will happen, not necessarily what will happen.
Melissa?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Just a couple, no questions, but just a couple of observations. Brian, I totally agree with you. I also think, however, just noting the difference, the $5 million jump in the tax revenue above rooms tax, I think families are more comfortable probably for the next year or two renting private homes, although our hotels were very busy and did a great job and were very safe this year, but just I'm not sure we're going to see a change in that trend so much. But and then the Steamship Authority just sent out a press release this evening that said their bookings are very strong for 2021 right now. So I agree with the conservative projections. It'll be really interesting to see how it goes. And I also just wanted to comment that I thought it was interesting that meals tax was up $200,000 year over year. It was probably the toughest year for restaurants nationwide, certainly in our community. But that was a positive sign that people were eating out, and I appreciated seeing that number. So, yeah.
One note to that, Melissa, is that at fiscal 20, the meals tax ended at over $1 million. So
Okay.
we're still at this point running with 6 months left still to go, but 6 probably or 5 of the toughest months ahead of us in terms of restaurants. At the end, it was over $1 million that ultimately collected. So
So that'll be interesting to see the year end. Great. Thank you for that, Brian. Great report. Thank you so much.
I think we can be pretty confident that this coming year will be very similar to this past year. The rentals are almost all already booked. And things may change in the future, but I wouldn't be too worried about this next budget cycle. I think you might.
I worry about every budget cycle.
I think you might see more than you did this year, because I think that a lot of what you saw this year is homeowners chose to not rent their homes. And the bookings that did happen a lot of them were over 30 days.
Okay.
Is there any other comments, or should we move on to the next one?
I think you can move on to the airport.
Good evening. Just looking at the summary page here, we are performing better than budget, but not quite as well as we did in FY20. But that is mainly due to the supplement that we got from the CARES Act. Eric, if you could scroll down to the summary page, that's it right there. Thank you. So you'll see the net earnings are about 4.3 million as opposed to 4 million last year. And then once we apply all the other ins and outs, it's 3.6 million over 2.7. Again, if it weren't for the CARES Act that we received, we wouldn't be so fortunate. And we're working closely with the finance department to figure out how we show and what we're going to be doing, or where we're going to be showing the CARES Act funding. We're putting that all towards salary and wages. So you may see a significant fluctuation in the salary and wages, but that's only because it's showing the number without the supplemental CARES Act funding. So overall, again, the airport's still in good shape. Back to some of the comments that were just made previously, we got hit significantly last year on the commercial side, but what we're hearing so far from the seasonal carriers is that they're coming back, and some of them are even looking at expanding service. So we're, again, just like Brian, cautiously optimistic. We're also in line for another $1.4 million of the stimulus funds that are coming out. So I'll be glad to try to take any questions. I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage. Our finance manager's out on maternity leave, so I could try to answer any questions. But so
Anybody
far,
have questions for Tom? I'm not seeing anybody.
thank you.
Good job. Next.
I think we're ready for you, Bob, for our Island Home.
Yes, can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So just a couple of high-level discussion here. Considering the situation with COVID, we've actually done quite well. We just to give you the quick snapshot, the Q2 of this year, I actually, what you'll have, I don't know if you can go to the next slide. Is there a budget slide attached? We had a large deposit made. You can see that there. Which was the CPE funding. So that was over $2 million that came in. So if you look at the FY 2021, where it says 4.7 million in revenue, what I did to compare same stores, I took that 2.3 million out of there, and based on similar comparison, the Q2 of this year, we were at 847,000 compared to 2020, we were at about a little over 1 million. So we were down by, actually that would be the next slide. Do you have a budget on the next one too? Right there we go. Hello? The difference in
Yeah, I can hear.
revenue from 2021 to 2020 was a decrease of about 150,000 in private funding, and really everything else stayed pretty constant. And that was due to COVID. I think it finally caught up to us. The good news is we have about 2 or 3 residents that are planning to be admitted in February. So as you can imagine, people weren't as interested in coming in during COVID. So if you use that, and actually if you go over to the year to date, which is a little bit over to the right, if you look at just July 1 till December 31st, we actually came out about 65,000 better compared to last year. So basically, bottom line is we're holding our own. We're doing very well in spite of COVID and in spite of the restrictions on admissions. Unless there's any questions on the budget, I was going to go right in to talk about the goals for FY22, if that's okay. That work? So we had in our story on the goals for 2022. I don't know if they're included there or not. Here we go. We had 3 basic goals for next year. One is to continue the collections efforts that we've been making, and that's tied into an EIR to try to have an increase in a business office assistant. The second goal was the assistant administrator. I think everybody knows Michelle Monroe. She is the new assistant administrator, and that has been a tremendous asset to the facility. And that is also put in for the 2022 as far as an EIR to continue that. And then the third goal is to have more consistent nursing staff and to decrease the travel budget. And also fill all the positions, which we've actually started to do. So we have in the 2022 budget under professional services, we have an EIR, I think it's $200,000, and that's the rationale for that EIR. The only thing to add, a general overview, is that financially year to date, I think we're actually holding our own, as I said earlier, going into hopefully the lifting of COVID. And I think once we see more admissions coming into February, the budget will increase even more. So. Any questions? Just an aside on the vaccination program, just because I know we were talking about it earlier, we've been very successful on the first round of vaccines. We had about close to 100 people, over 100 people, including staff and residents, no side effects. It went very smoothly. And we have the second round coming up, and we're very proud to still have 0 residents with COVID. So testament to the staff.
That's great to hear. I don't see any hands raised. So you all are doing great with your reports.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, very much. Next, I want to comment in Sconset. Mark.
Hello?
Please.
Are you guys still there?
Hi, how are you? Before we start, I'd just like to thank Brian at Finance and all the work him and his team do to help us with these budgets. They do a great job. Okay, with one comment, I know you've heard it a few times already tonight about being still a little cautious, not as much as last year, but projecting out, not really knowing what to expect. I think the summer will be, last summer was busy. I think, we sold a lot of water, and going into this year, we did look at the revenue and talking with Brian and working through some stuff. We bumped that number up for revenue, but up from what it was in 21, but still kind of maybe 10% short of what it was in 2020. So we're still being a little cautious, have moved ahead. Again, we performed, Wannacomet and Sconset both performed better than expected in 2021 so far. We still have a ways to go, but we're getting there. A few of the line items that I wanted to talk about where we have some increases. The salary is going to bump a little bit this year. We had to budget for two employees that will be retiring in 2022. Chris Pikus and Jeffrey Johnson, who combined are pushing high 80s in years of experience here at Wannacomet, both over 40 years, are going to be retiring in 2022. So we had to set aside everything needed to meet those retirement requirements, about $85,000. So that's where that change was from. A few other increases in spending. Our billing software, as you know, we do a lot with sewer. We bill for sewer. We work a lot with David and his admin staff. The software package we use is now being offered in a cloud-based situation. It's an upgrade. It's about $26,000. I know it's a lot for software, but the upgrade allows us to do a lot of things, and one is letting access to some of those some of the customer information by the sewer staff themselves, the admin staff over there. So instead of a lot of phone tag and emails back and forth when customers have questions about sewer bills, it'll be easier for the admin to go ahead and log into the cloud, into the new software update, and pull out whatever information they can to help customer service. So that was one of the major increases. That, and we put a little extra, I guess I'm a little gun shy after this summer, having some pretty bad water main breaks. I've added some money to that line item in the budget this year. Might not need it. I hope I don't need it, but I just want to put it in there. So we increased that by a little bit, as well as still increased our inventory for meters. As we talked a couple of years ago, we're in the process of changing out all the old meters. We've gone through probably close to 1,000 meters that we've changed out already. We're going to purchase a few more in our inventory item here. Line item here is a small increase to buy more meters and get the newer meters installed. Another few other things. We're looking at replacing at least one vehicle. I put in for two. We're probably going to go with one. We had one truck looked at, and it's going to be a minor repair to keep it going for a while. But the other one, I think it's a 2002 or 2003 Ford Ranger, and it's done its service, and now it's beyond repair. So we are going to get another truck for the fleet. But other than that, we're still a little cautious with this number. We're projecting out maybe 65 new connections, with a few of the bigger projects that are scheduled to start taking place in the next year, next 6 to 8 months. We think that's a pretty safe number. And that's about what I got for Wannacomet.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
So for Sconset, we took the same approach, increased from last year, 2021, and still stayed below the 2020 projection, so still stayed a little cautious. Really the only line item that expenses grew in the Sconset budget was some money needed just to do some maintenance on the buildings out there, a little bit of patching of a roof and some trim work. Other than that, Sconset maintained the same. And as we're talking about Sconset, we finally got word from the governor just recently, governor's office, that the merger has been approved. Wannacomet and Sconset will now merge together, so this would probably be the last time we do two separate budgets. They'll be combined into one. We'll be meeting with Libby and admin and Brian to go over the working that together into one budget and working into how the commission is going to form into the one commission. But it finally got approved after, geez, I kind of lost track of all the years. It's been a while, 5 or 6 years, I think, waiting for that to happen. So that merger is going to take place.
The Bob Gardner Memorial merger.
Yeah, I sent it to him. He said he was going to frame it and put it on his wall.
He worked very hard on that. Anything else, Mark?
Nope, that just about covers it, unless there's any questions.
Okay, next budget up is solid waste. Rob?
Yes, thank you very much. I'll start at the bottom and simply say that overall, the budget is proposed to be changing from about 11.2 to just over 11 at 11.012. So a slight decrease. That is, if you notice, the transfer from the general fund is slightly up from 9.9 to just over 10.2. But overall, what that is looking at is a number of different things. We have 2 proposed new positions to take over a reimagined take it or leave it. So those will be full-time union positions. And on the expense end, besides that increase, we have worked together with finance to do a fair amount of adjustments to the actuals for each category and each line item based on forecasts, real forecasts for 22. And we've been doing this with all of our budgets right along, but solid waste was one that it's just some larger numbers coming out of that. Also for 22, we are going to be subject to the new Steamship Authority increase costs, which are expected to be around 7%. So we've incorporated that in here as well. But overall, this budget is running similarly to how it's been in the past. You can see the changes in the last column where the major challenges have been changed. But other than that, it's pretty much sticking with a lot of the similar things. We're dealing with additional issues, and we're just trying to do those as efficiently as possible, such as PFAS and other challenges that come our way.
Questions? Jason?
I'm just going to make a comment on, congrats on getting the positions filled for take it or leave it. It's, I still get a lot of calls and comments on that every day. I know we've been working on it, so it's great to hear that, progress has been made. So congrats.
Thank you. I think there's some real opportunity there, and obviously this is it's really it has a lot more potential, we believe, than what has been really utilized there. I really feel like it has a potential to be a real focused community resource in more than just the ways that it has in the past. And I'm looking forward to the next generation of that. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Libby?
I think we have airport. Tom?
Hey, back again.
Yeah.
You'll see in the summary here, our revenues are projected to be about 7.6 million over what we have in this year's budget of 5.5. Expenses are showing at 10 million over 5.9, but it's a little bit of a misread there because again, the CARES Act money in 21 is not applied. You'll see in the 22 budget at the bottom there, we're applying the 2.1 million in CARES Act. So it's just a little slightly misleading, but the bottom line is again, similar to what I mentioned earlier, we're doing okay, but it's relying a lot on the CARES Act right now. But we are seeing numbers come back stronger. We had a very bad July and August, but September, October, November were much better than even previous years. So we're very confident, but cautious. Well, I can't be confident, cautiously optimistic, I guess, but in our revenues, I think we're going to do that easily. The other is, as I mentioned, we just recently found out that we're in line for another 1.4 million in funding from the federal government. So we haven't even considered that in this budget just yet. The majority of the driving expenses are on the salary side. We're looking at 2 new positions. One that will be offset by, we're taking some contract services back in-house. The other is a new position. It's a management level position to oversee airfield operations and maintenance. And then there are 3 positions that we've been deferring for a while, primarily because of COVID. So it's just backfilling those. And another big driver in our expense side is the PFAS and associated expenses with that. You'll also notice here that we typically transfer in $400,000 from our PFC account. And in the 22 budget, we're showing $250,000. That reflects the drop that we have been seeing in the commercial passengers, which is where the PFC derives from. So again, we're trying to be very cautious there, but still balancing the budget. And they're the main drivers. Glad to take any questions. On the detail, again, you'll see it appears that in the salary and wages section that there's a $4 million jump, and that's really not a true picture, I think, because certainly our 21 budget was not $1.4 million. We didn't lay off 3/4 of our staff. It's again just a matter of the application of the CARES Act money. When you put that in there, it gets much closer to the previous year's budgets. Any questions?
Yeah, I have one, Tom. This is Jason.
Yeah, sorry, I can't see everybody. Thanks, Jason.
On the revenue, you said you're down 2.5 million from FY 2020. Are you thinking that the commercial side of things aren't going to be not going to come back as fast this year?
Yes, and that was as we prepared the budget at that time, the information we had. And what we are now hearing just very recently, within the past week or so, we have schedules in for 3 of the main carriers in the summer. And JetBlue is looking at, during peak days, 10 flights a day. American is going to bring back Charlotte, Philadelphia, and Washington. And United is bringing back their 3 Newark flights with the remain overnight, and also adding Dulles service at this time. Now, all good news, and they can bring all the flights. Whether or not there'll be people on them is another question. So again, we're just looking at trying to predict the number of passengers. So yeah, it's driven mainly by the passenger traffic.
And Tom, if I could follow up, all those things you listed, JetBlue, they were non-existent this year, right? Was that all pretty much canceled this summer?
For the most part, they were down to maybe 2 flights a day. Some are 1 flight a day.
What kind of dates are they looking to start those up? Are they pushing it like further into the height of the season, or?
They're starting a little bit earlier. I believe they're starting in April, And they are, right now, I believe it's only showing into the typical Columbus Day timeframe. But again, this past year, they went to January 2nd. So
Are there any other questions?
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Libby, back to you.
Okay, the monthly town management and activities report. What I normally do is go through this without going through every single item, but trying to highlight the items that we've been most focused on or that have changed in any way since the last report about a month ago. So beginning with the kind of like plans, reports, and studies category, we have a number of these underway, including the following. These are maybe the more major ones. Coastal Resiliency Plan, I think you all know the status of this, and we had an update about it with our consultants at the board's January 6th meeting. The strategic plan, I think you know about that as well. Last week, you adopted your plan for 2020, 2021. Staff will now begin to work on implementation planning. We have not quite started that process yet, but we will. And then in a few months, we will provide you an update. The Nantucket Water Quality Improvement Plan, I am still working, this is on me, to schedule a review of the study that we did about Nantucket water quality and what the options to sewering would be. That needs to be a review with groups in Nantucket and the board, and I just can't get to it, but it is most definitely on my radar. The facilities master plan, you all had workshops in November and January, and we are going to be getting a summary. I don't think we quite have it yet from the Novak group of the conclusions I think that you made at the most recent workshop, and we will get together staff-wise and review next steps, and then we'll go over it with the chair and vice chair and get back to you all. Meetings, just a number of meetings shown here. There's a Board of Health meeting tomorrow. Meetings relating to preparations for the annual town meeting and election are ongoing, including logistics for the outdoor venue for town meeting. There are a lot of FinCom meetings about warrant articles. Same goes for the fiscal 22 budget. We have presentations upcoming with the FinCom on January 28th and 30th. We have the COVID task force, that is a weekly meeting. We now have a weekly meeting with town and hospital staff for the vaccine distribution planning. The Affordable Housing Trust, as you know, I believe is at your meeting on January 6th, and maybe even discussion in December when we were reviewing fiscal 22 general fund budget. There was discussion about allocating funding to the Affordable Housing Trust on a more permanent ongoing basis. And we've had a couple of meetings internally with your board member who is on the trust, Ms. Ferrantella, and other staff, including the housing coordinator, the real estate specialist, myself, finance director, and the chair of the finance committee and town council. And we, I think, reached the basics of a recommendation this afternoon, and we are planning to present it to you. I think we've said February 3rd. And so get ready for that. Baxter Road long-term planning. We are working on a scope to basically engage a consultant to develop a long-term plan for Baxter Road, which would use the same process or a very similar process, or a process, I guess I would say, modeled after how the Coastal Resiliency Plan process is working. And so that is underway right now. PFAS, communications and planning continues. We had a lengthy meeting today as to some communications we have received from concerned residents. We're working on a response to that. Unfortunately, responses are not simple to put forward. There is a lot of information out there. Some of it is not definitive. People want answers. We realize that, and some of these answers simply are not there yet. So we're working to determine the best ways to communicate with people. Our island-wide risk assessment report that we talked about a couple of months ago is close to being final. It gets reviewed internally briefly, and then we will put it out there, post it for the public to review, and have a presentation before the board at some point soon, hopefully within the next month. A lot of projects going on. Some of the most current include COVID-related meetings. Obviously, there are a lot of meetings going on. We've got weekly updates with the Department of Public Health frequent updates with the Mass Municipal Association, the Lieutenant Governor, and other special guests that appear at those meetings. And we're trying our best to keep apprised of the most recent state guidance, which changes quite a bit. And often we receive notices from the state that say, here's some updates. There's been some updates to, say, the travel order, but they don't say what the updates are. They just say, go to this link, and it's impossible to figure out what actually was updated. Lots of other projects underway here. It might be worth briefly mentioning that there apparently has been some chatter about the old fire station property and the placement of the meeting trailer, which has been up in the air for about a year. It's now being placed as has been planned the entire time with HDC approval. It will be for meeting space. And now that there were a lot of concerns that it was up in the air, now that it's being placed, apparently there are concerns that it's being placed. So we can't really win with that. But the idea, again, is to have a trailer for additional meeting space, which again, a year and a half ago, 18 months ago, when no one had any idea that we were about to have a global pandemic slam into us, meeting space was in dire need. And we made these arrangements, and now we are meeting. So eventually we will be meeting, and this space will be needed. The solar project at the water company, as you all know, we've had some emerging area neighbor concerns, and we are working on a response to that. The Washington Street, Francis Street intersection, we have design and project scope underway for that. We are continuing to review the police reform bill. And as you know, there are a couple of issues that have arisen, and we are working on those, as well as determining what cost impacts there might be to the town in fiscal 22, so that we can make sure we are budgeting properly for those. I'm trying to keep a kind of a running list of items we had to put on hold because of COVID. And I fully realize people are probably getting tired of hearing, oh, we can't get to that because of COVID. But unfortunately, the global pandemic is not over. And the global pandemic is taking the time of a number of key staff people who have to work on it. There aren't other people to work on it. As a result, there's no one to work on these things, but we're doing our best to get some of the stuff back on the table. So I won't go through all of these, but some of them are listed here. It's not necessarily all of them, but these are some of the ones that we've been trying to get back to lately. Personnel, just some items listed there. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director, we have a final candidate. We are waiting to finish off the paperwork with that individual, and hopefully within the next week or two, we will bring that person to meet the board at a meeting. And we're very excited about that individual. So I don't want to say the person's name because everything's not completely, signed yet, but I anticipate that it will be, and we are very much looking forward to working with the person. And I think that's it for the management activity report.
Jason?
I just want to add a comment in on the Washington Street, Francis, the intersection. There was a couple concerned citizens about the what was proposed, and BPAC looked at it, and then we met at the site with the DPW director, socially distanced and with masks. And we had a couple people on the phones. We talked about it and worked through it a little bit. So we even looked at it one more time just to really vet it and make sure that it was safe for pedestrians, bikes, as that corner gets kind of cut off in that curve. There's really no great way to get people across the street to go straight to the newish bike path that goes behind the duck pond on the old railroad bed. So it's I think we have the best option out of all the not great options. So I just want to throw that in there. Thanks.
Thank you,
Jason. Shall we move on to select board reports and comments? Continued review of 2021 annual town meeting warrant articles. Libby, do you want to take us through the updates?
Sure. So I don't have a ton of updates. And again, I have been sidetracked by PFAS and the DEI director and some other issues that had to be addressed. So some of these things are still kind of underway, but I'm only going to go through the ones that have really mostly changed since your last meeting or had some additional discussion. So not too much on that first page, Erica. Okay, that highlighted item under other financial, that I just mentioned this, dedicating a portion of the room occupancy tax revenue to housing. Still working on this, but it's as I mentioned with the meeting today, and we hope to have a recommendation to the board on this for your meeting on February 3rd. Harbor Place remains pending under zoning bylaws. Okay, so zoning bylaws, I believe, is Leslie on? The Deputy Director of Planning is going to come on and review updates with regard to the zoning bylaws or zoning articles that are being proposed by the Planning Board. Leslie? So just while she's coming on, in October, you had this, a similar looking sheet document from planning outlining the proposed articles, and I believe it has been updated. So that is what Leslie's going to take us through.
All right, thank you. You have an updated list in your packet tonight. We have not added any articles since the last time. I think a couple were actually removed. All of the articles that are coming from the planning board are continued implementation of the 2009 master plan. And there are mostly zoning bylaw amendments. There are a few, mostly zoning map amendments. There are a few zoning bylaw amendments, really just two, a technical amendment and one other change. So the planning board's bringing forward a fairly light slate of articles this year, mainly because of the carried over articles from last year, plus the new citizen petitions for this year. And we have advertised for the first public hearing on February 4th. It is a half-page legal ad in the INM, so that's going to be a very long meeting. But they are well aware of your new schedule and are planning to be able to schedule extra meetings to meet that.
Thank you, Leslie. I don't know if anybody had any questions about them while Leslie's here.
I can't see everyone, so call out if you have a question.
It's Matt. I have a couple. Shared driveway, we explained that article, changing the shared driveway rule.
I believe that was in the prior list of articles. The planning board's not moving forward with that. That was specific to secondary lots. There's a requirement in the zoning bylaw now that a primary and secondary lot has to share a driveway. The board waives that rather frequently, and they had talked about perhaps changing that requirement, but they've decided that because a special permit has to be issued anyway, that they would rather look at those on a case-by-case basis.
Great. I'm glad to hear that because it's just more cars crossing the bike paths. I think that's or crossing the streets. That's a good one. The other one, you're changing qualified family member for the definition. How does it? Why? What is that doing?
So we're not actually changing the definition, and I don't have the article handy, but we're only changing language in that definition to match the language in other zoning bylaw sections. So it's not a substantive amendment. It's simply a technical change so that all the sections read the same way.
Is that all your questions, Matt? Does that answer them?
Yeah, those are the two now. I haven't looked at the zoning closely yet, but those I would just picked up.
All right, and if I can add, the first publication of the notice is in tomorrow's paper, and we had intended to get all of the articles and maps posted today. We didn't get that done, but those will be posted sometime tomorrow so that they're available for view on the planning board website.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, Leslie. Stay on just in case there's anything else, please. So general bylaws. In fact, Leslie has been working on this, mostly relating to adjusting time restrictions and some other sort of cleanup. It's an older bylaw and there's some language that's really no longer valid. I need to get get to that. I have a draft that we're working with, so we'll be able to bring that to you very shortly. The Historical Commission is continuing to request a bylaw amendment relating to limitations on road improvements and construction. Town administration's recommendation is that this be more of a policy initiative, not a specific bylaw amendment. We have not been able to put this through a good solid review of what any unintended consequences might be. And as a result, we feel that this should not proceed as a bylaw amendment, but a board policy could certainly be worked out. Some of these items these are still being worked on. The potential sewer district amendment, oh, that's not even a highlighted item, never mind. Okay, is Tom, okay, Tom Rafter, you are still on. The airport has a request for a potential amendment to chapter 58 of the town code. Some information on this is in the packet tonight, including the current bylaw, an email from the airport, and Tom is prepared to explain it.
Thank you, Libby. This was brought to our attention through a process, the RFP process. Our rental car agreements were set to expire and we were developing the RFP. And as we were doing it, we were considering whether or not we would add an additional car rental company, or consider even if, if we had to replace one, how we would handle that. We elected not to add one because of the pandemic and the impact on ground transportation. But when we looked at if we wanted to award to a new entrant, it was somewhat precluded because of the way the current bylaw is written. So I think there's some concerns and issues with regard to the cap, as well as the control and or enforcement. And I don't know if Amy's still here or not, but she could speak to that much better. There's an issue where the rental car companies basically control the medallions. So they may purchase a number of them and not use them all, but they can just put up the $100 or whatever it is, and they control that. And there's really no mechanism to say, okay, use it or lose it by X date or whatever else. So I think the cap of I believe it's 700, and there's a little more that are issued right now, is actually having the opposite effect of what it was intended to do, because of other factors such as the Truros and other companies like that are operating, if you will, behind the scenes and not having to take out any licenses, get any controls, or pay any fees or anything else. So we had asked, our attorney had looked at it, town council looked at it. We developed a rough article, but I think there's some other issues. We had a meeting recently, and I think Amy brought up some other concerns that we probably, if we were, in this proposed warrant article, we would like to be able to address too. So I'd like to continue working with town council and our council and Amy to put together what should be a warrant article to address the deficiencies that we see in the existing bylaw.
Matt?
Tom, are you talking about lifting the cap? Is that what are the deficiencies?
And it's harder for me to explain than some of the others, like Amy, but the idea would be to lift or eliminate the cap. Now, again, personally, I certainly understand why the cap is there. I get it, but it's by putting a cap on it, you're making the medallion a commodity and increasing its value to the holder. And that gets translated into higher rental car fees, as well as the ability for somebody else to operate underground or in background without paying, and they're competing directly with the person who holds it. So it's kind of like a catch-22 right now.
Right. Well, I don't think people should be operating without. That's an issue that was brought up a year or so ago, but we haven't had a chance to really look at it. I look at this, and the market will not. I think if we had adjusted to say if you don't use yours, it can go elsewhere, that would be fine. I am very worried about lifting the cap, and everywhere you travel, there's parking lots full of rental cars They've all got to come on the boat and leave on the boat. They're taking space for our customers. We have a vehicle problem as it is on island. It was important that we put this in place when we did. Otherwise, we would probably have 3,000, 5,000 every summer now. And so I think that as a, I for one, if we make a tweak to it to make sure people are using it, that's great. If we tighten up on people who are doing illegal rental of vehicles and see if that's possible. But I think lifting this would be a huge mistake.
I'm not gonna, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I mean, respectfully, Matt, I disagree with you. We had a pretty significant back and forth about this in a meeting, I think it was last week. And what's happening is it's the same thing that happened when we didn't increase taxi licenses and Uber took over. Turo is going to take over. And I think that it's better for us and for the airport's revenue to allow this to be done in a more regulated way. And there's really not the availability of land for a lot more places to park things. I don't think that we're going to see that level.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
It is partly revenue, but I think is more service related in that, let's take this through. And if we were to develop a request for proposal for 3 rental car companies, which we have that many now, and let's say we had a new entrant come to us that was going to give us better service to our customers and to the island and to everybody, and we wanted to select them, we need to have something, the ability somehow to award them that without saying, because in there it says you're subject to all town rules and everything else, so they have to get the medallion. But if we wanted right now today to award it to new entrant A because they're much better than everybody, they have better car, whatever, we're precluded at the way it is right now. So we just need the ability. And in my prior life, one thing that was done, I worked for a state agency, and it was under liquor licenses, but they wouldn't approve a liquor license until that tenant had an agreement with our agency. So it's another way to look at it possibly. And there's different ways to skin it, I guess, but that's one of the concerns we have, that if we preclude somebody from coming in, that could be detrimental to the airport, because as we all know, there's currently one major operator that is in bankruptcy.
Jason, then Christy.
I'm really glad we're having this conversation. Donna, your taxi, I'm trying to think of your taxi example. I'm not sure if it's because taxis because they were capped, that's allowed Uber to come in. Taxis just all over the world, not on Nantucket, just didn't adapt fast enough for whatever reason. And it was disrupted by a different technology that was faster and more convenient. They jumped up 10 levels. And I think that's in a way what's happening here. Like Turo's coming in. But I think now, because we've seen things with the taxis and Ubers, and now we can have this conversation and figure out, how do we adapt? Maybe it's not, I'm not convinced either way, Tom. I don't know if it's lifting the cap. And if we do that, we have some different rules, or we tweak it somehow, because I see your issue, but the next Turo is coming soon. We don't know what it is. And I don't want to hurt our current car rental companies, but how do we bring more competition in and not create that commodity? So I don't have the answers, but I'm glad we're talking about it.
So if I may, Madam Chair. So there are 2 issues there, and they are related, though. You're absolutely right on the Turo and the Uber. They're covered under a different set of rules. They got to get out ahead of you, new technology and so on and so forth. But let's just stay in the rental car realm right now. Again, going back to my example, if we select a new entrant and 2 current operators, one of the existing ones could take their medallions under today's rules, set up shop across the street, and I can't award to a new entrant because they're precluded from getting it because of the cap. So that's one of the issues we're up against. And again, I don't know all the answers either, Jason. I think though we had a very good conversation with our attorneys and with Amy, who's very knowledgeable on this, especially when it comes to enforcement control and measuring it. So that's why we'd like to just ask to be able to continue working so that we can come back with something that we could present.
Jason, then Matt.
Question, how much of it is state driven and how much of it is local control? Because with the taxis, there's only so much we can do within the state framework. Is this similar?
If I may, Madam Chair, rental cars, I think, are predominantly local, and the Truro Ubers are state. And in fact, I need to follow up with our attorneys because the Uber issue, we were left out of state legislation when in fact it singled out Massport as being able to put controls on Uber, but no other commercial airports in the Commonwealth. And we said, and it rightfully should be, all commercial service airports. So again, that was, as I think you said it earlier, it's a disruptive technology, new technology that's out there ahead of things. They went out and laid the groundwork in states first. I don't know where Truro is on that, but again, they would be controlled by the state, where rental car right now, my understanding is more controlled by the local town.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, just my experience, you fly into Florida, you fly into Hawaii, you get off the plane, you get shuttled to a huge lot with a zillion cars, you get in your car and you get in a line in Hawaii, you're in a line of traffic with rental cars. And I experienced that 2 or 3 times. And I said, what are we doing? If we ever go this direction, we will ruin this island. And so I feel very strongly that this is, that some control. We cap, the state allows us, we cap liquor licenses. We're a couple over, we're figuring it out. That there's nothing different here. We have some, so we have people, island businesses to protect, and we have the whole sort of, the whole island to protect from this. Old South Road is a mess already. I can't imagine a plane getting off and 12, 15 rental cars drive, unlimited rental cars driving to their homes and hotels. We have to really think this through. This should be, this should be a topic of planning. This should be a topic of looking at the results. This shouldn't just be let's try, we need to fix it. This should be figure out what we want. I think what we have now is broken for your respect, Tom, a little bit, and maybe we should tweak it slightly, but I am very, very wary.
Tom, maybe you could speak to the availability of parking for these cars at the airport. I mean, how much more could you?
We really can't accommodate more. When we looked at the potential of a 4th operator, we thought we might be able to accommodate some of it, but it would be limited. And again, so from that capacity and what the relationship, if you will, with the Truro and the rental car is the impacts it has on the characteristics of the typical rental. So where we have seen in the past a number of long-term rentals, possibly even all month, we now might be seeing shorter term rentals because of the availability of these underground operators, whatever you want to call them. So that's the dynamic that we're facing too. And again, Matt, I truly appreciate what you're saying. I'm not looking to have a zillion cars out here, and we don't have demand for that. But I look at it right now and say, I'm up against a wall where if another company wants to come in and I have to say, you're not allowed to because you can't get medallions, I'm not sure that's going to go over too well.
Christy?
Thank you. I hear what Tom's saying and also what Matt's saying, and I think it's maybe not a one or the other, but an and of, can we increase the cap, maybe not have it be unlimited, but also how do we fix the regulations so that people aren't just holding on to medallions and not having them in use. I think we did a lot of work with the taxis to make sure that people on the waiting list kind of weren't, we fixed the discrepancies. People weren't just waiting on the wait list year after year and kind of adding their name over and over again. And that was causing other people to not get into the market. So I think we could do the same thing here where we kind of improve the efficiency and, make it a little bit easier to enter the game, but also not have, thousands of more cars on the island. And I also think it's worth starting to look at the Turo app and see kind of what guidelines might be coming through at the state level. I think Uber helped a need when there weren't enough taxis on the island, and now we're seeing the out-of-state Ubers come to the island. And so how do we kind of tackle that? And the same thing with Turo. It could be helpful, instead of bringing more cars to the island, could locals be renting their cars? But again, how do we prevent the additional cars coming to the island? So I think there's a lot of things that we can start to look at and explore with this, but I think it's worth exploring.
So I think that is the main question, right? Is whether we can bring this forward for debate at town meeting. And in the meantime, do even more homework on different options.
Yeah, if I may, if we could
Yes.
craft a warrant article that tries to address most of this at least, and then be able to open it up for discussion. Because like I say, and again, I'm not promoting this or anything, I'm just throwing out an idea that if there's a number or a universe that, you come up with, it may be that you allocate a certain percentage to public transportation facilities, maybe to the boat, to the airport, and then another percentage to whatever category you want to put it in. Again, so that we're not just wildly opening up the floodgates.
I think that that's totally reasonable. Does everyone feel okay about that?
Well, I can't, I'm not okay till I see what we're actually doing and why and the rationale behind it. I know the rationale behind the other one. I'd like to see in writing, the work that's been done on this before I agree to it. I mean, we can talk about it at town meeting, but if we talk with the information that we have right now, I'll be strongly opposed.
Jason?
Could you tell I wanted to say something?
Well, you undid your mic.
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking, I think it's okay with the town meeting if, kind of what Matt is saying, if we have a little more information. So it just doesn't go wild, the month or week before town meeting and misinformation. Really, what are we doing? And we might find out we don't have enough information, and not that we could take it off, but it might not be ready. But I think we should move forward to try to get it ready. But I think we need to see what we're looking at. What are the options? And if we're not going to increase the cap, then what else can we do to fix some of the issues that Tom's bringing up and that we talked about tonight?
Just if I may, with regard to timing also, if we can't get something together or even get it past the town meeting, this will impact the operation, not just this coming summer, but the following summer. So we're looking at 1.5 to 2 years down the road before we can implement some level of control that makes it equitable. So.
I think there's consensus to at least further develop this. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so in other updates, that was the end of bylaw amendments. Home rule petitions are continuing to be worked on, mostly just resubmittals of things we've already approved. Luckily, we can strike off the Wanacom-Wisconsin merger since that has now been enacted. And a little update on citizen warrant articles. So as the board will recall, we carried over 22 articles from the June 5th, 2020 annual town meeting. And before we knew we were going to reschedule town meeting, we received an additional 25 articles by the November 13th deadline. And when we extended that because of the rescheduling of town meeting, as of this afternoon, today was the deadline at 4, we received 10 more. And I want to really acknowledge the town clerk's office. They certified the signatures on those articles by before 4:10 today. So they were on fire with that. So 10 more articles, and we will get those posted and sent around as soon as we can, but it, is after the end of the day today. That's it, and I probably most likely will have another update for the board on February 3rd.
Matt?
Can I just comment on the road? But if we're going to have a road policy, I would suggest we discuss that and put that in place, sort of to follow the recommendations of Historical Commission, put that in place now, we'd have one less article. So I think as a board, that's something we should consider and take care of in the next 4 weeks, 6 weeks. So.
I mean, town admin is happy to work on that if that is a priority of the board. I'm only just commenting that there are a lot of priorities right now, and if this is one of them, we'll have to figure out what to drop.
I mean, I think that that's an important item, but not necessarily things to knock other things out of process in the next month. Maybe it's something that can get done in the next 3 months. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, I understand that it'll come forward to the town meeting as a bylaw and if it's coming forward as a bylaw, if we can deal with it as a policy, can we deal with it as a policy and not have it as a bylaw? That's what I'm thinking.
So clarification, it's
not,
simply, go ahead, Dawn, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say I think the discussion has been for it not to go forward as a bylaw, but to develop a policy, because that's the better route in terms of being able to act on things more expeditiously. Sending things to a vote of town meeting is a lot more cumbersome and not really the right path for issues like this.
So Matt, just to clarify, it would be at the board's vote to include the proposed bylaw amendment or not. It wasn't submitted as a citizens warrant article. Sorry, that was probably confusing.
All right, I got that. Okay.
There is another article that was submitted as a citizen warrant article that relates to the same bylaw. So there probably is some confusion there.
Okay, does that sound fair? We'll develop a policy. Committee reports, if we're done with town meeting. Christy?
Thank you. So the Affordable Housing Trust Fund met this past week, yesterday, and just a few updates. The land bank is working with the Affordable Housing Trust to move a structure, possibly to the land that we purchased at 7 Amelia. So I think it's a really great collaboration where it's actually cheaper to demo the building than to move it, and the land bank is helping with those costs if we move forward with that. So I think it was a really great collaboration I wanted to bring forward. A second one is the governor has signed special legislation to allow us to purchase the UMass property over by the hospital. And so we are working in coordinating the process with the hospital to move forward with this, but it's been a long process, and we're excited that the legislature has moved forward with this. And another big thing is there's existing units there, so we're using the Neighborhood First money, and so we're really excited to move this forward.
Thank you, Christy. Great news. Jason?
I had a couple things. One was kind of inadvertently turned into a select board type issue for me. For my day job at Mariah Mitchell, I've been in meetings with dark sky initiatives on Nantucket. Recently, you may have seen different street lights being added in with higher lumens and certain Kelvin. They're changed, right? In the corner of Tom Evers and Milestone and Sconset. And so Gail Walker from the Sconset Civic Association, myself, astronomy director here, Regina, and some other people have been meeting in Lawrence Sinatra, and it ended up putting my select board hat on of trying to figure out, we have an ordinance. It's very hard to enforce. People have tried with different bylaws and warrant articles. So really trying to put our focus working with National Grid, and anything that any lights that change How do we put shields on them? How do we get them to be 3,000 Kelvin versus 4,000? And so I'm learning a lot about this, but I think there is a position or an area for the town to, as a municipality, to be able to do some more work on this, whether it's working with National Grid or doing some kind of very light, not a committee, but a light work group to do this. Because the night sky is, I think it's good for tourism. I think the cultural district could get involved. I think the civic association. I think there's a lot of different players that we could do some good. So I just want to throw that out there. You might be hearing more about this from me. And second, I'm sure some of you saw in the paper some comments about how we don't argue or disagree enough anymore. And I wanted to give my thoughts on that. I think we disagree quite a bit. I think we're not disagreeable. I think we disagreed tonight and kind of worked through trying to figure out this car rental medallion thing. I think we all disagree. It's just we all respect each other, and I think we do really well. And the more I've been thinking about it, I think one of the issues that allows us to be more to not be disagreeable as much is because of the strategic plan. I really think it helps us focus on what we're doing, and there's consistency with everything that we're working on with staff and with us, and things aren't just coming at us, like a meteor shower. Sorry, bad pun there. So I think we're heading in the right direction, and I don't want to be more disagreeable, but I want to continue to disagree with you and vice versa. Thanks.
Thanks for those comments, Jason. I appreciate it. Anybody else tonight? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Thank you all. See you soon.